Welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. This is a podcast in times of COVID. It's also a way to reconnect with dear students I've worked with in the past. Of course, they're no longer students, they're also teaching and doing all kinds of interesting things. Today, I'm so privileged to interview Abir Saha. Abir, I don't know if you still pronounce your name in the Indian way, so excuse me. I'm sure in the US it would be Abir or something else, but
Yeah. In the US, it's definitely a beer. Very much so. I've gotten
so
used to that
So when you're
now.
going to grab a beer with a beer, so it's kind of a
Yeah.
interesting
It,
meeting for sure. But okay,
it,
yeah, go ahead. You had to say something.
it's gotten a little old, frankly. I think when I came here in college for college, when I realized that that's the connection people would make, Um, I definitely try to avoid situations in which that would come up. So, yeah, it's definitely been an interesting twist on my name that, frankly, I should have seen coming, but no, I did not.
Okay, I think we'll get along with our business of interviewing you.
Yeah,
This journey has been fascinating. I've been just watching, like, just following your LinkedIn feed recently, and just knowing that you're a curator at the Smithsonian in Washington D.C. sounds super cool. Many
yeah, I
students
feel
I've worked
fortunate.
with, yeah, and also the fact that you started off as mechanical engineering at University of Virginia, which is a kind of coveted place to be. We'd love to know more about that. Just to remind myself, you graduated from high school in 2009. I've known you ever
Exactly.
since because we were neighbors
Yes,
and
yes.
always kind of was never disappointed with the sound of music and guitar playing that emanated from your apartment. I'm
Uh-huh.
sure we'll talk about music and other interests too during this course of
Sure.
20 minutes. Very quickly, what did you expect when you went in to college and University of
Hmm.
Virginia in 2009? Was it
Mhm.
very different from what you had imagined life would be?
I think I was really excited, Arjun. When I went to UVA, when I moved to America, I was thrilled. I remember my dad went there to sort of drop me off, and I was just more than happy for him to leave. And in retrospect, that might not have been the most sensitive thing, but he also recalls my excitement. So I was really thrilled, and it was always beyond my expectations at a lot of levels. In one sense, because I really didn't know what to expect. It was my first time in America, and really um, living in the so-called West. It was the first time for me, and so I didn't have huge expectations. I knew it would be fun, and UVA and Charlottesville really met up with all of those expectations. In one sense, way beyond anything I could have imagined.
When you look at few things that really worked during your 4 years and things that really were challenging,
Mhm.
could you kind of reflect on the people or situations that would define your 4 years at UVA?
Mhm. I think one of the best decisions I made was to stay in one of the um, regular undergraduate dorms. I didn't choose to live in the international dorms. I didn't choose to live in like special colleges within the university. I chose to live in the dorms where I could really interact with Americans my age, and that was in retrospect, I think that was definitely one of the best decisions. I was able to make friends with people from uh, a lot of different backgrounds for sure, but also just regular day-to-day Americans, and I think that was a fascinating experience. Also, to have the college experience that was let's just say typical of American colleges, big American colleges like UVA, was fascinating. It's something I wanted to experience, and it's something that I got in all its weird and complicated and messy situations that it can offer. So I think definitely one of the best things I did was stay in a regular dormitory with 20 other kids. Yeah, I think that was
That's good
fascinating. That
advice
was a
for sure
fascinating
for anyone
experience.
listening in. I'm sure that's great advice.
Yeah,
But what about
yeah,
choosing the academic path that you'd already signed up for, mechanical engineering?
yeah.
And what is it
So
like?
of course, and engineering, I mean, at the undergraduate level at this point, everywhere is, um, it wasn't exactly what I'd expected, frankly. It was there was a lot of, well, book learning. Most of the hands-on engineering that I was most excited about and looking forward to was reserved for the end of the third and a little bit of the fourth year. So your final year, basically. Um, was when you actually got to, you know, play with circuits and motors and things like that. A lot of the other training was mostly mathematical and if a little bit involving like computer modeling and all. So I did some CAD and that was interesting. But overall, I think it didn't meet my expectations because it was, when you think of mechanical engineering, you really sort of, at least my naive understanding at the time was, yeah, I'd have greasy fingers and I'd be, taking things apart and putting them together. And that's is really not what you do in engineering anymore. So it was unexpected, and I remember probably the best thing that I did going through undergraduate, something that I wouldn't have been able to do in India, is take classes in different areas, in different fields altogether. Every single semester, I took at least one class in whatever I remember: astronomy, oceanography, economics, religion, philosophy. I took classes in things that were not engineering. And I think that was probably, looking back, one of the smartest things I did.
It's interesting because you're also pursuing a PhD in environmental science and the link with capitalism and all the problems of
Yeah,
capitalism.
yeah,
How
actually,
did that go?
it's
Are you still pursuing it, or is it still?
yeah, it's a PhD in environmental history, actually. So it's a history PhD. But a lot of my research is on the history of the environment and the history of the ways in which the environment has influenced human history,
So this
society,
is
culture.
definitely stems from your initial sort of idea of liberally educating yourself. And if you
Exactly,
hadn't really taken those
exactly.
classes in philosophy and history,
Absolutely. I came to appreciate the liberal arts so much by doing that. So the way that worked was after my 4 years of engineering, I decided, you know what, I don't really want to do this engineering. Like it's not what I had in mind. And I sort of figured that out in the last couple of years. But at that point, I'd invested too much to step back and change course. So I decided to finish. And overall, I think it was a good decision to finish. And I got a job working at a financial data warehouse. It's basically this company that builds a lot of software and gathers a lot of financial information for Wall Street. And I worked there as a database consultant. So I used to visit small banks and talk to them about their data needs. So I suddenly turned into this basically a database engineer. From a mechanical engineer, I sort of picked up SQL, which is this fairly easy language to learn. And I started doing that. And that was fun and interesting, and I had a great team. So everything was going well. And then after 2 years there, I started saying to myself, I can't really imagine myself doing this for the rest of my life. It's nice, but it's not what I really care about. And so I sort of thought back to my undergraduate experience. And in undergrad, I'd written this, what's called a socio-technical thesis alongside my technical thesis. At least that's what it's called at UVA. And I'd written about the Yamuna River and the sort of religious as well as political and environmental politics that had emerged and converged on this river in the early 2000s and 2010 period. Um, to revive the river, right? Because the river wasn't doing so well, and so on and so forth. And I remember just loving doing that project. And so I went back to meet one of my professors who was sort of responsible for that, who was my advisor. And I said, how can I do this for the rest of my life? And he said, come join our PhD program. And that's sort of how it went. I started applying for PhDs. I got in for a couple of master's programs here and there. It wasn't the easiest transition moving from engineering to history because I didn't really have that much experience in history. Thankfully, I had this socio-technical thesis, so that got me most of the way. But it's not the easiest job convincing someone that you want to get into a history PhD. So I got into a lot of master's programs, but UVA, because of my professor, was ready to accept me into the fully funded PhD, and I went for it. And I
That's
think from then on,
fascinating. And I think that speaks volumes of a large public school and the personal connections you
yes,
were able to form even in that setting.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it really depends
especially
on the
connections with
institution.
professors, right?
Yeah.
It's hugely important. Anyone applying for any sort of higher degrees in the US, if there's some way you can actually meet with the people that you're applying to work with, it's going to do wonders for your application. Yeah.
Your thesis seems so fascinating, sitting half the way across the globe and thinking about our, backyard Yamuna River.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well, it's
really,
because I grew up around
yeah,
it, right? I grew up in Delhi. I was born in Delhi. Yeah.
right. And I read something about sacred environments, and I think
Mhm.
the Yamuna River obviously has a strong presence in Hindu mythology.
Mhm.
What was the connection? Did you draw connections in your thesis in for that, or it was not necessarily
Yeah,
with?
no, absolutely. I did. So I was always interested in the environment, and the Yamuna River was something sort of close to home that I identified with its, frankly, a miserable condition. I mean, the UN called it dead not so long ago, and so I started looking into I picked up a few books that where it spoke about it, and I started looking into its condition and how it got that way. And I was especially interested in how people who thought of the river as sacred were especially motivated to like find out about sort of the environmental realities of the river. It wasn't just save the Yamuna, but it was also look, this is how polluted it is. This is the biological oxygen demand level. This is, these are the chemicals in the river. I mean, there was a sort of translation going on between religion and sort of in the environmental reality, and that's what I focused on in my undergraduate piece. But later on in grad school, when I started doing my history PhD, I also sort of detoured a little from my for my dissertation and did this half a year long project. I wrote a paper on the Yamuna again. So I've had this abiding interest in the river, and I hope to publish on it the moment my dissertation is done with. But right now, that's what I'm focusing on. I'm wrapping that up as I start this new job.
Fascinating. And I'm sure there are students in our network who are interested in pursuing interdisciplinary majors and
Mhm.
love to put two and two together and
Yeah, no, of course. I'm
maybe
always
tell them
happy
your
to
way.
talk. Yeah.
So, anyways, moving forward, I'm gonna change the pace of things.
Mhm.
Kind of rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
If you were to think of three strengths and adjectives that sort of define those strengths, which three words would you pick?
Strengths, as in my own strengths,
Yep.
or?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, I would definitely say a curiosity and a willingness to learn. I've always been intellectually curious, so there's that. The other would be I keep persevering. I mean, a PhD is a whole and total act of perseverance. There's no way you're going to get it if you are someone to sort of give up halfway. There, it is a very, very demanding, extremely long process that you just need to finish. So I'm on that home stretch, the home run of my degree. So that, and I'd say I like to pursue my dreams. So there you go.
That's great. One more question about failures, learning. I know you talked about in not liking mechanical engineering as much, but leave that aside. Anything else
Yeah.
that life has really taught you?
Life here. I think what you learn, not just here in the atmosphere, but also as you pursue higher studies, is you can't be afraid of criticism. I think in India, at least, well, I don't want to generalize. At least as I was growing up, there was this sense of really fearing criticism. But here, criticism is the ladder for growth and improvement, and I think that's an important and sometimes difficult lesson to learn. So yeah, one I've definitely been learning throughout the PhD.
Okay, from the time I've known you, I know your interests in music and basketball and other things
Hmm.
related to writing. I remember you'd always
Yeah, yeah. You have a sharp memory, Arjun. Yes, after 10 years. Yeah.
right. What? How did those change, and what new things did you pick up?
Sure. Interestingly, I totally dropped basketball after I moved here for the simple fact that everyone was so much better. I mean, the quality of basketball here is just 10 steps above in India. Plus, the people who do play basketball here are a lot taller, and I'm not any 6'3" giant like my brother. He still plays basketball. I play a lot more cricket, actually. I got into playing cricket after coming here. I mean, I played cricket in school as well, but there's something nostalgic about playing cricket now, and I love that. Um,
And do you think it's got to do with Virginia, DC area that you still can?
no, I think it's anywhere that there are, Desi folk or just a larger South Asian population. Lots of Bangladeshi kids will also be love playing cricket here. So yeah, I'm sure DC has several. I'm in DC now, by the way. DC has several cricketing clubs. I just haven't had a chance to join them yet because I've moved only recently. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for that. And about the music, it's been up and down. I remember when I first came to the U.S., I used to do a lot of music, and then eventually, when grad school happened, you sort of grad school takes over your life, and I had to really make an effort to start playing my guitar again. Finally, now that I'm seeing light at the end of the tunnel, I've been playing a lot more and singing and all of that. So that I think that'll always be with me. So it goes through its phases, but it's definitely up on the crest right now. Yeah.
This job at Smithsonian, the curator, it
Uh-huh.
sounds like a night in the museum
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
it does.
fantasy um,
Yeah,
sort of story. What does it really mean? What is your day like?
sure. Yeah. So, curators at any museum have broadly three things that they do. One is they create exhibitions. So when you go to a museum and you see a presentation on a certain topic or a certain era, that's created by curators because they have to select objects or art. I do objects. I'm an historian, so yeah, and they have to present it in a certain context alongside other objects and try to tell a story and have make an argument essentially. So exhibitions are the first and most important thing that curators do. Um, well, it's kind of hard to say most important. I think it is one very important thing. The other very important thing that curators do is they collect for posterity. They collect objects that will have a history and will be important to preserve for the future and for in telling a story for future generations. That's important and significant. So I enjoyed that quite a lot. You get to speak with really interesting people. Almost everyone will pick up your calls if you tell them you're a curator at the Smithsonian. So I've managed to have conversations with people from all walks of life and people about whom movies have been made. It's been a really interesting a journey as far as collecting goes. And finally, research. All curators conduct research because the rest of the other two exhibitions and collections are kind of based on the fact that you are a serious researcher and academic.
I read something about aerospace, or if I'm not sure,
Mm-hmm.
aeronautics. Is that
Mm-hmm.
a particular project you're working on at the
No,
Smithsonian?
I'm not working on aerospace. The Smithsonian is the world's
Very
largest
large.
complex of museums, and one of the museums there is the Aerospace Museum. and that's sort of been under construction. So they're doing a lot of work there. One of the things that I'm working on is helping with an exhibition for the Smithsonian's 175th anniversary, which is going to happen next year. So we've been working on that to sort of reconstruct some pretty amazing technological presentations. So I'll say no more because I don't think I'm allowed to.
Right. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Looking forward to the
Yeah.
trailers and reviews. Maybe this
Absolutely.
year it's all going to be online. What do
Yeah.
curators and museums have to offer now in this world of lockdown? I know many collections are available for view online.
A lot
What's
of things
the
have been happening. You're right. A lot of things have been happening online. Curators have started creating video content from their homes, which has been fascinating. Um, but a lot of the plans for exhibitions on the floor have obviously been postponed at this point indefinitely until we get back into the museums, because at the end of the day, museums are real brick and mortar buildings and places where millions of people come to visit, and so it's definitely affected that world. At the same time, I think we're also having an opportunity to collect in very interesting times. We're collecting masks and we're collecting the kind of photography that people are putting out there at this moment. So there's always work to do as a curator. It's just not necessarily right now as public facing as it often is. And the public facing stuff is definitely more in the digital realm now. So it kind of fits with museum efforts worldwide to become more digital. So it's sort of pushing us in that direction.
fascinating? Again, just the fact that we all, in all our careers in education and in your work, have nimbly adapted to sort of
Mm-hmm.
seize what can be done instead of just
Yeah.
being complacent and uh, just kind of giving up. That's the strength of humanity. Again, these interesting snippets from your life really show the positivity. Where do you derive all the positivity from?
Huh.
What do you do to feed your soul and being?
Yeah, I'd like to think that I'm a fairly sort of spiritual person. I try and meditate every day, and I also read a lot, and that gives me a lot of peace. Not just history, but I read a lot of philosophical literature. So I've been a contemplative person, and I think that definitely helps me. Especially in today's day and age, when stress is a very real thing, and at increasingly early ages, I just recommend people, take 5 minutes in their day and take deep breaths, do yoga. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something. It's been on your Instagram feed and everything else. What's
Uh-huh.
yoga and what's how did you get into it?
Yeah.
Where are you going with it?
Yeah. I used to, I never liked going to the gym, and yoga for me started off as like a way to exercise that I could do at home or do at a yoga studio, and but it never became a very active and regular part of my days until honestly just the last year or so. And I went to this yoga studio that I really liked, that had a really strong community angle to it. That clicked, and I started going regularly, and I made friends, and all of a sudden I find I find a tremendous amount of value in the practices of yoga. So for my physical health, I've never been healthier, but also like my mental and emotional health have been great because of the kind of contemplative practices that yoga encourages. So I'm actually doing a yoga teacher training, or at least I was until all of this happened. So
Right.
that'll start back up whenever we're allowed to do that. But I've been taking plenty of yoga classes online, especially now. There's so many free ones. Yeah, I
Great.
encourage people to do that.
Super. So one more question about your me time, like the time that you want to call. I know you mentioned meditation, reading. Is
Mhm.
there a suggestion, like authors, books that you've recently read, or any
Mhm.
other online material that you think is worth sharing?
Sure. I am a huge fan of the Bhagavad Gita, actually. I remember I started reading that text on my flight to the US about 10 years ago. Um, and it was the first time I just picked up like a Gita press version, those tiny pocket versions. But over the years, I've read a lot of different translations, and it's a very short text that offers this really fascinating perspective on life, and it's given me a lot of just hope and peace and contentment in the way I approach things. So yeah, no, I recommend it as just like a non-sectarian text, frankly, because it resonates with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. Um, yeah,
Sort of
yeah.
see the
So
connection, the dots with Yamuna and the Bhagavad
and
Gita.
yoga and things, yeah, it's all because I mean the Bhagavad Gita is really all about yoga at the end of the day. It's not so much about the asana practice, but it's about the state of mind. Yeah. Yeah, so
Fantastic.
that definitely links up. As far as sort of, I guess, more worldly text, I'm a huge reader of fiction. Um, I love fiction. I especially enjoy fantasy fiction. I mean, I'm someone who grew up reading Harry Potter, for instance, and I still am today a huge fan. But I think a lot of people who sort of read those books at a certain point growing up never sort of keep reading fantasy. And I urge people who do enjoy a good story to read people like Brandon Sanderson, who's a huge up and coming fantasy author. He has several series, tons of books. Any of his work would be a great start for someone who wants to sort of re-experience or add some more magic to their lives. So yeah.
Fantastic. I'm sure some of our students who are supposed to go to college this year, I'll definitely share your recommendations with.
Yeah,
Uh, Coming to those kids, actually, they are sort of disappointed in general.
of
They don't
course.
know what's coming next. They're supposed to have a packing list ready, and like you,
Hmm.
all excited about discovering a new
Yeah,
land and a new life. Uh,
yeah,
and also the kids who've just graduated from college, having lost their internships or job offers.
yeah.
What do you think is a way to tide over the storm in their lives?
Sure. I mean, I can especially speak to people who have just graduated because, the economic prospects don't look good. I joined college, a year after the financial collapse of 2008, and I joined um, UVA in 2009. And I met a lot of people who were, starting to enter the job market at those times. And I see that, they've all most of them have overcome that, right? No one has been sort of permanently um, disabled because of graduating at that time. So that's what I encourage the people who are graduating right now, that this will also pass. Work your network, your circle of friends, your connections to find something that will get you going, or just like give you some experience for the time being, even if you have to do some unpaid internships and whatnot. Do that. This too shall pass. I think I can say that very confidently. As for students who, were planning to come to the U.S. this August, and that might not happen, and they're probably doing online classes or whatever it is. I'm not exactly sure what different colleges are doing about it. Um, I'd say, yeah, it's okay to be disappointed, and take your time to get over that. But this is also a new experience, frankly. This is also going to be, I mean, in one sense, a historic experience. When has this ever happened before in the living memory of most people? It hasn't, especially not like doing college from continents away. That's just, I think it's a fascinating experience. It's also not going to be how it's going to remain, right? There will come a point where students will actually return to in-person classes. And I think now is the time to find what you really can get out of an otherwise unexpected situation, because all of these unexpected situations have unexpected rewards in one sense. I've definitely found things that wouldn't have done otherwise that I have been able to do during COVID. So find those things.
Great. So I think with that, we'd want to wrap things up. It's been a
Sure.
delightful 25 odd minutes chatting with you after so many years, the reconnection.
I agree, Arjun. Yeah,
Amazing.
thank you.
Thank you so much for energizing my evening here, and have a great day ahead.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.